Hey there, welcome back to the channel. My name is Andrew Clarke, and in this video, I want to talk about the 10 biggest mistakes that I see intermediate guitar players make. All right, so first up is relying too much on tabs. Now, tabs are a great resource. There's nothing wrong with tabs. The problem is that a lot of guitar players become far too reliant on them rather than learning how to play by ear. And honestly, the same kind of goes for reading music as well. If you take that route, I think it's very, very important that you learn to play things by ear. And this really just comes down to incorporating some form of ear training into your practice time. And it doesn't have to be fancy at all. It can just be learning a song by ear. So putting on a simple song, even listening to it with your guitar in your hands and trying to decipher the chords or maybe the melody that is being played. Alternatively, there are programs and apps that you can get that can help with ear training, but that's definitely not necessary. And by no means does this mean giving up on tabs altogether. The idea is just to supplement some of that work with tabs with some playing by ear. For my own playing, I would say 90 to 95% of the time I'm doing everything by ear. And then when something is particularly complicated or it's fast or it's just hard to hear what is going on, then I will pull up the tabs and learn that way. On to number 2, which is focusing on speed over precision. Obviously, it's impressive to be able to play fast, and depending on the genre of music that interests you most, speed might be a very important component of that. But when it comes to actually improving your skills, it is much better to slow something down and really focus in on the nuance of playing it correctly rather than stumbling through or sloppily playing something faster. I think sometimes I'll see guitar players try to impress especially other guitar players, with their speed, but that precision falls by the wayside, and it's gonna sound a lot worse than if you just slow it down and focus on playing it precisely. And this isn't just about rhythm and timing, this also goes right down to things like nailing the vibrato or the ghost notes or any other nuance that might come up. On to number 3 is avoiding music theory. And if you've been a fan of my channel here at all, you know that I talk about how important it is to at least learn some music theory. And the truth is that you don't really need to learn that much. Even as an intermediate or even upper intermediate guitar player, there is not a ton of music theory that you actually need to know. But if you do want to get beyond just reading tabs and playing what the tabs say and actually start understanding the instrument and maybe start being a little bit more creative, then that little bit of music theory is gonna go a long way. I have plenty of videos all over my channel that cover all of these essentials, but I would recommend watching my video on essential music theory that every guitar player should know. I will make sure to have that linked in the description. Number 4 is inconsistent practicing. And I think a lot of guitar players are kind of guilty of maybe binging. So on the weekend, you're gonna sit down, you're gonna play your guitar for 4, 5, 6 hours, and then taking these big, long, extended breaks, sometimes a week or even a month. Now, a good way to combat against this is just to make sure that wherever your guitar or your little practice area is set up, that it is very accessible. So you are seeing your guitar, you're not putting it away in its case and sliding it under the bed. There's a whole thing like out of sight, out of mind, and you're far less likely to pick your guitar up if you're not even noticing it. Now, you might assume that this means you need to set up some crazy practicing schedule. And for some types of people, depending on how you learn, that might totally work for you. Having some sort of rigid schedule where, let's say, every single evening when you get home from work or you get home from school, you're gonna practice for 35 minutes. But if you are anything like me, that type of thing just is not going to work. And so what I'd recommend is just trying to pick up your guitar every day or at least every other day. And sometimes that's gonna mean sitting down and doing some very focused practicing. And other times it's gonna mean sitting there and watching YouTube or TikTok and having your guitar in your hands and just noodling and getting comfortable with it. Just having your guitar in your hands and as a regular part of your life is going to go a really, really long way in helping you to progress further down the road. Number 5 is not fixing your bad technique habits. And as an intermediate, this is kind of the point where you start to lock in these bad habits for life. So if there is something that you're doing in your guitar playing that is going to cause you problems down the road, if you don't fix that at this point, then every single year that goes by while you continue to do that, it's just gonna solidify that thing further and further. It's gonna make it harder and harder to break that bad habit in the future. Now, obviously, things like holding the guitar are very important, but I think it's important to mention that posture is also very important. I have always neglected my posture when I play guitar, especially when I'm sitting down, and that has led to a lot of like neck and shoulder issues. Nothing too serious, but if I'm sitting and I'm playing guitar and I'm doing this with my body while I play, obviously maybe it's a little bit easier to play or more comfortable to play, but over time, it's gonna develop those issues. And because I've been doing that for over a decade, even now, I actually have to make a concerted effort to tell myself, hey, sit up straight, put your shoulders back, and hold the guitar properly. Every single technique that you do on the guitar should feel relaxed. There shouldn't be any tension anywhere in your body unless you're playing something crazy fast. Even when you are picking something that's pretty quick or you're playing something with your fretting hand that is quick, it should still feel very loose and those muscles should not be too tensed up. One specific bad habit that I will mention, because this is something that plagued me for a very long time, is not fixing your vibrato habits. One thing that to me, whenever I see a guitar player on Instagram or wherever else, and they are playing something, one of the biggest tells is their vibrato. And again, this is something I didn't fix until very recently, and it's something I still kind of struggle with. And that is having your vibrato come from your finger rather than your wrist. So it is very common to see a guitar player, when they are applying vibrato to a note, to shake their finger, something like that. It sounds very sporadic, rather than their whole wrist. Now, there are different correct ways to approach vibrato, and everyone kind of has a slightly different one, but some tips that really worked for me was to kind of focus more on shaking the neck a little bit. So right here, I'm not really moving my fingers at all. All I'm doing is I'm using kind of my wrist and even a little bit from my elbow to shake the guitar neck rather than try and make it come from the fingers. That finger vibrato is just always gonna sound like more inconsistent and not as smooth. When you are applying vibrato from your first finger, a good tip is to imagine that you are opening a door, so a doorknob with that hand. So it's not really going up and down. There's some cool vibrato techniques where people do that, and that works very well. But when I'm applying it, I kind of think more that I'm turning my wrist. And again, I'm not actually moving this finger. This finger is locked in place and doing this rather than trying to vibrate that finger and get the vibrato that way. This is one of those habits that if you don't fix it in that intermediate stage, it's going to be very hard to break later on. Number 6 is playing the same thing over and over. And this is something that I think guitar players at every level are guilty of, but we just kind of start to settle into our comfort zone, right? We've already done all the work to be able to play this catalog of songs or whatever other skills that we've already worked on. So it's a lot easier to sit there and just go through the things that we already know. And this doesn't mean you need to push yourself too much outside of that comfort zone. You don't have to go, okay, well, I'm gonna learn this Eric Johnson song or something incredibly challenging when you're not at that point yet. But I do think that you kind of always need to be working towards something. Even if it's just for a little bit of your practice time that you're working on every day, you can work on stuff you already know for a good chunk of that time. And then towards the end, just kind of focus on learning something new. And this can be a new song, it can be a new technique, it can be a new music theory concept. Something that I've found to be very effective for my playing is learning some stuff from a new genre. Even if you don't love that genre, it can be really cool to go take some of those notable techniques from that genre and then bring it back into the genres that you like. Number 7 is not recording, tracking, and analyzing your playing. And this sounds a lot more serious than it actually is. All I mean is just to have your phone or whatever you use to record yourself, recording yourself, and then watching it back. The reason this is so important is because all of us, whenever we watch somebody else do something, it's very easy for us to tell if someone is good or bad at that thing. For example, if someone is singing, all of us can tell if that person is good or bad at singing. However, when we are singing ourselves, it might sound really good to us, but to another person when they are listening to us, it might be bad. And we just won't know unless we listen to ourselves as an objective third party. And that's essentially what we are doing with our guitar playing as well. It might feel like what we're doing sounds really good, but when we record ourselves, now this can just be audio is fine, but video is even better. You don't have to share it with anybody other than yourself, but it's really gonna be able to help you analyze what you're doing, be able to pick out, oh, hey, I thought that sounded really smooth and that transition was really nice, but in reality, it was nowhere near what I imagined it to be. Then rather than just passing over those mistakes as if nothing is happening, you can actually go in and fix those things. With today's technology, pretty much all of us have access to be able to do this as well, and it can make a huge impact on your progress. Number 8 is not playing with other musicians. Now, I think going out and meeting people for a lot of us can be a little bit scary. And then especially putting something like our guitar playing out there into the wild for other people to judge, that can also be really intimidating. But there comes a point where you kind of just have to learn to get over it. And most of us musicians are really kind and really patient, and no one's gonna make you feel bad if you're not at their level yet. And honestly, the benefits of starting to play with 1, 2, 3, or however many other musicians, they really can't be overstated. It's gonna help you with your rhythm, it's gonna help you with your understanding of music, it's gonna teach you to be more creative, it's gonna teach you to collaborate, and also it doesn't have to be going out and joining a band. It can just be finding a friend that also plays music, and nowadays you don't even have to be someone who plays an instrument. Maybe they're a producer and they make beats. But just get together and kind of try working on some sort of musical idea together, and you'll find that this can be very beneficial. All right, on to number 9 is letting social media demotivate you. And I am so guilty of this. I will go on Instagram or TikTok or YouTube or wherever else, and I will see some guitar players that are absolutely insane. And some days it kind of makes me just want to put the guitar down and say, okay, it's time to move on with my life. And so I can imagine that if you are in that early intermediate stage or moving through that intermediate stage, when you see these amazing guitar players where their skills seem so unattainable, especially if they're maybe younger than you, it can really make you feel demotivated. I think this just comes down to asking yourself why you play guitar. Guitar is not a competition. We do it because it's fun, it's something we enjoy, it's a creative outlet, and you never ever need to be comparing yourself with somebody else. If you can make a mindset shift, try and let that stuff inspire you to practice or learn something new. And I know that that can be really, really challenging, but it is very important for your growth. Okay, last up at number 10 is copying instead of creating. And this goes all the way back to number 1, where I was talking about tabs, where a lot of guitar players are really only copying something. They see the tabs and then they're just trying to emulate exactly what was played in the original. Now, there's totally nothing wrong with doing that, but you do also want to try and incorporate some more creative elements. And this just means learning things like improvising solos, or writing your own songs, or even just putting your own spin on an existing song. There's a lot of really creative approaches to cover songs. I think even if your goals are not to play in a band someday, these creative things make the guitar way more fun, and they kind of open up all these new horizons of these different things that you can get into. Once again, I have videos about all this stuff all over my channel. I'll be sure to link to them in the description below. There'll be a little section called referenced videos. You can check that list out. I'm sure you'll find something interesting there. Okay, so that's gonna do it for this video. I hope that there was at least a couple of things in there that you might find helpful. There's probably things that I missed, some other mistakes that intermediate guitar players make. So if there's something that stood out to you, something that you thought of as you were watching the video, please leave that in the comments below. We'll all look forward to reading that. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, and please also consider subscribing to the channel here on YouTube. I release 1 or 2 videos every single week. With all that said, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. If you want to keep watching, YouTube thinks that you're going to like this video right over here. And if you want to support the channel, get some bonus videos from me, and get the official lesson notes for each video that I put out on YouTube, you can go check out my Patreon by clicking over there, or you can go below the video and become a channel member. Thanks for watching.